Hello. I want to go over some functionality added in Vicinity 4.51, which is our June 2025 release. Specifically, this is for BC clients. Business Central has a part of its application, just native and inherent, called dimensions. Dimensions are a form of user-defined fields, but really at a transaction level. It gives a BC user the ability over time to categorize any information in the data that we want to. So, for example, if I take a sales activity, for example, I might be interested in looking at who's buying the product, wholesale versus retail. I might want to know what area of the country, or maybe it's domestic versus international. Maybe I want to know the type, big family product groups that are being sold. Dimensions gives the ability to put a tag or a controllable field value on any transaction that you want to. And you can have multiple. You can have as many dimensions as you want to on any transaction. And this gives the ability for report writing or doing dashboard query and things like that, a chance to group like data together. Now, Navision had started with this and did as a strong part of the Navision platform that was inherited by the Business Central platform as well. So Business Central has dimensions natively built within the application. And again, the whole idea behind it is to think in terms of groups of user-defined fields. So these are different groups, and inside each of these groups you can have different data elements or values. So if I go to department, for example, I can go and look at the dimension values in my department dimension code. So I've got admin, production, sales, etc. Maybe more in the manufacturing world. Maybe we're thinking more in terms of the item types, whether you have different types of products we make, could be even raw materials versus packaging, etc. Again, it's all there just to help from reporting, because each of these dimension values, the actual these lists, can make their way to an individual transaction. So I can group all of my spray dry products that I sold, or all my powder products I sold, etc. Now, how we introduce that is that on the Vicinity side, when we create transactions in Business Central, we now give you the ability to add dimension codes to the transactions before they come over to Business Central. And I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through the setup, as well as how you can define a default for a transaction type, as well as how you can override that. So dimensions are, and the dimension values are set up within Business Central. It is a Business Central thing. I've set up an item type. You also see my department and customer. We're going to focus on the item type. Now, to utilize this and to map this into Vicinity, so we work off of the parameters section. And what we're going to do is we're going to define a parameter. In effect, we're basically mapping a dimension in Business Central to a concept we already had in our system called parameters. So we see parameters with things like times and temperatures and flow rates and machine settings on formulas. That's traditionally what a parameter has been used for. We are using it also to be able to pick up these dimensions. And so all I need to do is set up the dimension, say item type. It already knows as soon as I set up my dimension and give it a type of a BC dimension. Prior to this release, these 4 existed, and this BC dimension was added in this release. So I select BC dimension. As soon as I do that, the system can see all those dimensions that were set up over in Business Central. Remember, we saw the customer group, the department, the item type. That's where that came from. And then within each one of those, they have the default values. So this is how you can say across the board, this is the default that I'm interested in using for this parameter. Not particularly helpful unless you're going to do something like Vicinity, for example, going to the source. But what we're going to do is show you how we can now use this parameter on a formula-by-formula basis to help group our formulas. Again, we're using a formula and an item type as an example here, but we're able to group these transactions by the type of item or the family products that we're making. That's the use case here. So I've got an item type set up here as a parameter. Now what I want to do, and it's just set up like any other attribute is, or any other parameter or property, it just sets it up here, and now it's available to be used within Vicinity. So what I want to do is I want to start going through my formulas. I'm going to tie mine to formulas. I'm going to tie this parameter to my formula, my red oxide primer. So we'll go ahead and pick up red oxide primer. We'll just go ahead and pick up version 0. And specifically, we're working off of parameters. So I'm down in the procedure section, and more specifically, I have enabled parameters. If I haven't enabled this box up here, it's going to look like this, and I'm just going to see my formula. I want to enable parameters so my little slider box becomes available. Now, the next most important part of this is we want to put them in formula parameters, not down in procedure type parameters. These are going to be where times and temperatures are going to go, things like that. So if I want to set the oven to this temperature and then change it later when I add this ingredient, I can do all those kind of things. What I am talking about is a formula parameter. So you want to add a formula parameter. So here, we'll take this guy and get into my formula parameters. Here it goes. Here it goes. Into my formula parameter here. Once I select and add a line, which is what I did, now I can come in and I can select the parameter I want to assign. In this case, it's the item type. So that's the BC parameter dimension that has been tied to this parameter, item type. If I scroll over a little bit, I'll see my options for my default values. Now remember at the beginning when I set up the default value, it was under liquid. I can set this into powder, for example. And this will be the default every time I make a batch of this formulation. It will be set to powder. Then I go to another formula, I can set it to whatever it is. If it's always the same, in other words, it doesn't vary batch by batch by batch, you're done. All you need to do is set up this tag or this dimension into the formula, assign it just like I did on the formula, and then every transaction, if I do anything different, every transaction will get this value of powder in its dimension code. Now, if I want the ability to modify it on a batch-by-batch basis, maybe it was something more operational in nature, first shift, second shift, or something like that, something that's going to change for this formula, then I could do that and just make this modifiable. Now, when I make it modifiable, what this allows me to do is make a batch using this formula, and I'm going to be able to change the parameter for that specific batch. So now it's sitting here on powder. So let's open up batch entry. We'll create a quick batch ticket for my red oxide primer formula, and it was version 0 if I remember correctly. There it is. Now, parameters on a batch ticket are down in its own section, parameters. Don't look for it in procedures. And specifically, we're on a batch type here. We've got our batch type setting came in automatically. I can see that listed here. And now I have the ability to change that, say, from my powder to spray dried as an example. And I can make that modification to this batch ticket and just save. Now, when this transaction goes over to Business Central, it will send the dimension code for item type. It'll send spray dried over to Business Central. So now it's being categorized with everything else that we've got. So while we covered a lot here, it's really only setting up the dimension in Business Central, which is probably already done, and then tie that Business Central to a new parameter. You need to set up a parameter in Vicinity, and now you're free to use that parameter on whatever you want to. In this case, I put it on formulas, so a formula parameter. If you find, right now we've got it tied to the formula. If you find other reasons or other places, maybe to the item or something like that, let us know. Something we can expand into. But right now we're categorizing all of our formulas together to be able to give you a dimension code, and that dimension can be overridden on a batch-by-batch basis as long as you make it modifiable. Anyway, I think that's it. Let us know what kind of things that we might be able to do to help. If you guys are struggling with something, maybe some training, or maybe it needs a new feature and something added into our user interface. Let us know, and let us know how we can help. Look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.